The action that the agent did on the um, the part is that he ate a chunk that is not applicable to the Muslims, but it's not their culture to eat pork.
Hi. The case problem here is Rowell is converted into Islam and he suddenly ate a pork steak. He was very upset and sad of what happened. So the question here is the act human acts or acts of man? So my answer is human act. Another question is this case moral according to consequentialism? Explain. This case is moral because consequentialism is the end of the result of the act. And according to consequentialism, act is good if the result is good, and act is bad if the result is bad. Although some people might say that um, it's okay to eat pork, but the side of Roel is not okay actually, and would not agree with it. However, when judging the idea solely to its result, as a classic of consequentialism does, then the end justifies the means. Another question is this case moral according to deontology? No, it is immoral, because according to deontology, it should be universal, meaning this act should be universally accepted by everyone. In the case of Rowell, it is not accepted by everyone because they already know that Rowell is converted into Islam, and deontology simply means that the morality of the action is not based on the consequences or of the result of the action of a person because it is based on the act itself from a sense of the duty obligation.
Theory of virtue ethics, the act of Rowell is moral, as virtue ethics recognize good based on the character of the person, not on his action. In the case of Rowell, he did not contrary the said theory. However, he violated the will of Allah in the belief of Muslim community without noticing it. As in the first place, he just felt empty and he did not notice that he was eating pork that is strictly prohibited in the Muslim community. But at the end, we can see that Ruel managed to be good and regretful about his action, as the greatest religion is to be true to your own nature. The next theory abides that human nature should be the standard of the morality. In the case of Ruel, his act recognized as immoral in the theory of natural law, because as part of the Muslim community, he must follow what's Allah's will, which is not to eat nor touch a swine. And even though he was not aware that he was eating pork, it crosses the line of being natural in the Muslim community that makes his action immoral. Thus, natural law recognizes good if the agent does what is natural and rooted in their life before they born and even after death. Thus, being Christian before doesn't matter as he was converted into Islam and eating pork is not natural in the Muslim community. Divine command theory or divine law tells that authority abides in God. In the case of Rowell, who accidentally ate pork, a former Christian and converted into Islam as he was married into a Muslim woman. According to said theory, his act was evil. Although he was a former Christian who can eat pork and he did not notice that it was pork he was eating, still his act was evil according to the Quran, a manuscript of a Muslim. Allah prohibits eating pork as what mentioned and written in the manuscript that all Muslim cannot eat nor touch a pork. Thus, according to the divine law, only God can determine what is good and evil, and the morality resides in His will that is written in the Holy Scripture. And we can see at the end, Rowell is regretful about his action, so we can conclude that he knew that eating pork was prohibited in the Muslim community.
As legalism is concerned on the law of the state created by men and which are used to create order and peace to the society, it cannot be determined that what Ruel did was right or wrong. There are no statement in the law stating prohibition on eating a specific meat as it does not apply to all populations. However, using this theory, Ruel cannot be excused on violating his religious law as ignorance of the law excuses no one. Good, according to emotivism, is a statement that expresses feelings with a motive force, which in turn influence and persuade other persons' thoughts and conduct. In this case, after being told that what Roel ate was pork, he immediately reacted, realizing that he made a mistake or his conduct was not good. This can be considered good, as his sister's statement was effective to stimulate a reaction from Roel. As what emotive theory suggests, his sister's statement has an emotive effect which expresses judgment on the behavior that Roel conducted beforehand. For Roel's situation, justice was not served. Following the ethical theory of the divine law, his act was a violation of the teachings of the Islam and considered as not good. It was not indicated that he suffered physical consequences or faced a punishment as a compensation for what he did. This lack of physical sentence means that Roel wasn't able to receive his due or what he deserves, thus lacking justice.
The agent of the act is John. The act of the agent is acts of man. John's act is acts of man. It makes acts of man because the action performed without much thought. It is not dependent on his intellect and will, where the action accomplished through the lack of knowledge and deliberateness. And the act is done under circumstances, such as he really wants Nora's forgiveness and the fear that Nora will leave him.
Consequentialism means the act is good or bad depending on its consequences. In case number 8, it is not moral knowing the fact that John is married and caught by his wife having a sexual activity with other women. However, in terms of the consequences to his action, it is moral that his wife didn't tolerate his action since it is bad. Basically, this principle concerned with the ethical decision stating that consequences of the act is the most important thing to consider. Deontology focuses on judging the action itself. In short, the action is judged rather than the consequences of the action. The given case is not moral according to deontology because John didn't fulfill his duty as a husband to his wife. John cheated his wife with having an affair to other women that is forbidden in marriage law. The case number 8 shows deontology which his action is not acceptable to both human nature and law, meaning deontology does not believe that the morality of the action is based on the consequences, but it is based on the act of itself, the sense of duty or obligations. Virtue of ethics focuses on the mind, character, and sense of honesty of a person, in which it teaches us how to live in a virtuous life. We need to do good generally in other people that is important to develop our good moral character in order for us to achieve our happiness. Honesty and loyalty is part of married life. John's action is contrary to virtue of ethics which he didn't fulfill his role to his wife. His dishonesty led him to cutting his sexual organ and end up being alone. On the other aspect, the case number 8 shows virtue of ethics in which John trying to ask forgiveness from his wife, but suddenly his wife didn't forgive him.
Is this good according to natural law? Explain. According to natural law, the act of having a sexual activity with another person that you are not married with is not good. In doing this, it may be called an affair. This act is not good because basically, a married person must be faithful despite of any issues that is going on their lives. Also, it is not natural to hurt yourself in order to obtain forgiveness. Is this good according to divine command theory? Explain. According to divine command theory, having a sexual activity with another woman, even though you are married, is not good. One of God's 10 commandments is, "You shall not commit adultery." God created marriage as a symbol of His loyalty to us, and we shouldn't break marriage for the sake of our own pleasure. On the other hand, making our own decisions on what we will do to our body is also not good, as it disobeys the Holy Scriptures. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20, he asked, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you? Whom do you have from God? You are not on your own, for you are bought with a price, so glorify God in your body." Is this good according to legalism? Explain. According to legalism, a married man having a sexual activity with another woman that is not his wife is considered as not good. In Article 333 of the Revised Penal Code, it states that who are guilty of adultery. Adultery is committed by any married woman or man who shall have a sexual intercourse with a man not her husband, and by the man who has a carnal knowledge of her knowing her to be married, even if the marriage be subsequently declared void. Adultery shall be punished by prison, correctional in its medium and maximum periods.
The good according to emotivism is how our moral judgments expresses our own feelings that could possibly affect others. So in this case, John was caught cheating by his wife, and he thinks that it is moral and the right thing to do to be forgiven is to cut his own sexual organs. So in the perspective of emotivism, the right and wrong depends on the person itself. So John finds this cutting of the sexual organ as the right thing to do, but the effect of this to Nora is that he approached this in a negative manner because she was furious and she was devastated by knowing the actions of John. So in this case, you can see emotivism as how we express our own feelings, our own perspective, and how we can affect others. So yes, this is a good for according to the emotivism. Legally speaking, justice has been served because according to legalism, we had the law of man that are created by the state that which are not to be violated. So in Nora's case, she has the right to broke up with John and have the greater right to file legal action towards John because John committed a violation due to they are already a married couple and he cheated free willingly without others forcing him to do so. So justice has been served in this case.
The Maccabean party list take a neutral stand on issues concerning the NPA and the government, which for me is an immoral act. Their actions, according to them, are summarized into 2 points. The NPA has their own legitimate concerns in fighting against the principles of the government, and calling them out as enemies of the state would indicate a total separation and deny opportunities of peaceful negotiations between them. This neutrality, however, is immoral as it blurs out definite judgment on a particular issue that equates as a support to the oppressors and never help the oppressed, which then encourages violence that threatens community safety and human dignity. Using the learnings on teleological ethics, particularly on utilitarianism, in order for an act to be good, it should result to the pleasure of the greater people, wherein on this issue the Maccabean party list failed to do so. Being on the middle is not good, and most importantly on this issue, and I believe that the fight of justice has no sidelines, and it is very important to choose sides because the price of silence can be vicious to handle as it could cost a human life.
Judgment forms by the set of action, not by what the naked eyes can see. The article we choose tackled about the criticism and Maccabean bloc which they defend their rights and position towards accusation of other parliament in the Congress during the Senate hearing. As I dig deeper, I perceive mixed reaction with regards to any political issues or concerns. The issue evolved in the accusations of other parliament to Maccabean bloc by being the head of recruiting CPP, NPA, and red tagging issues. Thus, the inappropriate accusation arises within the Senate hearing which leads to misunderstanding by both parties.
Kabayan Bloc party list remains to its neutral stand regarding with the concerns, regarding with the issues that concerns them with the NPA and communist fighters, which is clearly immoral. According to them, um, condemning the NPA and the communist fighters would only uh, limit the possibility towards the peace negotiations. And it is hard for them to condemn people who seek only for justice because they believe the NPA had their own social reason. But this is immoral because silencing your voice and being neutral uh, means you are putting or you are proposing an obscure judgment towards the actions of the NPA which defies the government. And so, in line with the theory of ethics, we have the utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham, which we have to weigh the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. So, by taking neutrality, you are not taking side, but hence you are giving a support for the communist by saying that you are paying respect but not condemning them, but not condoning what their action. And in this case, the NPA and the other communists will be empowered and will be encouraged to do the right thing, to do their actions because they believe that they have the support of the high-ranking officials. And also, this will highly threaten the safety of the community by just taking a neutral side.
It is all about the Maccabean party list clarify matters on a Senate hearing about the issues concerning between Communist Party of the Philippines and the New People's Army or CPP and PA and the government, which for me is a moral act. It is a moral act because they believe in parliamentary struggle and not in armed struggle, which is being used by the NPA, which it turns out to encourage violence instead of peace. And calling enemies of the states would lessen the opportunities to settle the issues under peace negotiations. According to the theories of legalism, good is when the man follows the rules of the law, or moral good is dictated by the law. It makes immoral because the Maccabean bloc is against the government, where their action states that if they are against the government, then they are also against the law, wherein considered as bad, in the consonance with the theories of legalism. There they said, we are not part of the NPA, but we respect and agree the decisions from NPA is prohibited by the law. To make it moral or good, according to legalism, it is sufficient to follow the law that consists duties in every situation. And no matter what happened, NPA is a communist party that never support government.
Essentialism. Hi. The case problem here is Rowell is converted into Islam and he suddenly ate a pork steak. He was very upset and sad of what happened. So the question here is the act human acts or acts of man? So my answer is human act. Another question is that, is this case moral according to consequentialism? Explain. This case is moral because consequentialism is the end of the result of the act. And according to consequentialism, act is good if the result is good, and act is bad if the result is bad. Although some people might say that it's okay to eat pork, but the side of Rowell is not okay actually, and would not agree with it. However, when judging the idea solely to its result, as a classic of consequentialism does, then the end justifies the means. Another question is that, is this case moral according to deontology? No, it is immoral, because according to deontology, it should be universal, meaning this act should be universally accepted by everyone. In the case of Rowell, it is not accepted by everyone because they already know that Rowell is converted into Islam, and deontology simply means that the morality of the action is not based on the consequences or of the result of the action of a person, because it is based on the act itself from a sense of the duty obligation.
Issue number 2. Macbayan block congressman not condoning the notorious acts of the NPA and even paying respect for their action as per former Congressman Teddy Casino and Congressman Carlos Zarate. In this issue, we could say that the act done by the Macbayan block congressman is considered immoral. Even though they respect what the NPA is doing, the notorious acts are not good in people's perspective. The notorious acts can cause trouble not just in government but also with the lives of people. In line in the natural law, it is not natural to pay respect on bad habits that is done by the NPA. When we hear about the NPA, we could automatically think about negative ideas about them, and respecting on what they are doing may be considered as wrong.
The Macbayan Black Congress denies the association with the NPA, a communist rebellion in the country that uses armed struggle. This kind of issue affects me as a student and a citizen of the country, as the organization is against on our government and become more excessive because of the situation of our state. For me, this kind of act is immoral because it can affect the country and its people and can create misunderstanding and conflict. And according to the theory of legalism, the act of Macbayan Black Congress is immoral. Although they don't agree about the notorious act of the NPA, yet mentioned in the Article 3 of the Civil Code, ignorance of the law exempts no one from compliance therewith. That explain that Macbayan Black Congress violated the law, as the government is also part of the law that must follow its conjunction.
And the act that has been done by to a port which is not that by the Muslim community.